show where we discuss political, economic, and socio-political developments across the nation and even in the globe. Like we said, it's the midweek, and today our focus is on the micro, small, and medium enterprises. Why? Because every nation in the world has MSMEs as the key drivers of economic activities, major source of employment, and contributors to the gross domestic product economy of the nation. Today, we'll be looking at scaling MSME interventions to address unemployment and lift millions from poverty in Nigeria. Let's take a look at what we'll be discussing on the outline. And first, we'll be looking at the expansion of the National Social Investments Program. Also, we'll look at the Trade and Industries Minister, Ottoabasi Adebayo's engagement with power sector industry leaders earlier this week on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. We'll also look at the setting up of the National Business Development Services Providers Certification and Accreditation Framework Committee. Also get an insight into the Central Bank of Nigeria interventions for MSMEs this year amidst the pandemic and recession. And also, we'll look at our topic for today, what we must do to scale these interventions so that we can address these twin socioeconomic challenges, unemployment on one hand, poverty on the other. Let's begin with the fact that President Muhammadu Buhari has graciously approved the expansion of all national social investment programs as part of efforts to stimulate economic activities in the country. First, we're now going to see an increase of the N-Power beneficiaries from 500,000 to 1 million beneficiaries. That's triple times two, double. That's times two in terms of the increase. Also, we're going to see an increase in the Government Empowerment Enterprise Program beneficiaries by 1 million. So the increase of beneficiaries has also been taken by additional 1 million. And also, there will be an increase in the beneficiaries of the National Homegrown School Feeding Program by 5 million. These are all efforts geared towards reaching out and alleviating the excruciating effect of the socioeconomic challenges we face on the vulnerable, poor, and the lower class strata in the country, particularly in the rural areas. This was conveyed by the Minister for Humanitarian Development and Disaster Management, Hajiya Sadiya Farouk. It is expected that this whole new dimension of expansion of interventions will scale down to the masses and be a source of succor in the midst of challenges in the country. And we'll be giving you updates on that development because non-governmental organizations, advocacy groups have called for transparency and accountability in how these whole interventions are laid out. Let's get on to the next thing. You know that power is a very important issue in Nigeria. The power infrastructure drives industrialization anywhere, but in Nigeria it has become a necessity to driving activities of businesses and organizations and even institutions. It is viewed as the forefront of innovation and can also help in implementing Nigeria's own strand of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And understanding how important this is in terms of the role it can play in industrialization and business development, the Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment, Ottoabasi Adebayo, met earlier this week with captains of industry in the power sector. It was an opportunity to engage and explore ways the power sector can support the growth of industries and drive competitiveness for Nigeria as we prepare to join other African countries in signing and fully implementing the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. It has been signed, but the implementation is going to take effect from next year. Particularly, there has been an increasing call for the revamping and development of industrial zones across the country, from Kano to Lagos to Calabar, even down to Kaduna. Various industrial zones need to be revamped to bring them to speed. Provisions also need to be made to scale areas like manufacturing, which has been on the decline in output in terms of growth, agro-allied industries, which really need to come on to speed, textile that needs to be revived, and of course, the support to small and medium enterprises the industry sector, which also needs to scale up, and services, who have all been adversely affected by the impact of the pandemic, manifests in the third quarter 2020 economic growth report published by the National Bureau of Statistics. So if power works well, definitely we're on course. Next is understanding the fact that we need to really boost our business processes. The Honorable Minister of State for Industries, Trade and Investment, Ambassador Mariam Yalwaji Katagum, officially inaugurated this week the National Steering Committee of the National Business Development Services Providers Certification and Accreditation Framework. According to Ambassador Katagum, the major aim of the framework is to set the standard for business development service interventions by providing the mark of equality, the mark of quality for the delivery of these business development services to the micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria. The minister said the committee was expected to effectively coordinate the certification and accreditation process to ensure that a high level of transparency and credibility is brought to bear on the framework consistent with all acceptable international standards. This is a welcome development because part of the major concerns raised even in the tour, what you call the National MSME Clinic across states in the country, was the need for MSMEs to not just scale, but also have an effective certification and accreditation process that can make them compete in terms of their products and services in the international community. So the certification, the accreditation process is very important, and it's expected that the committee will work with all relevant agencies to ensure that MSMEs receive these benefits and we begin to see the impact not just in Nigeria, but at the continental and international level, which has become very imperative for the nation. 2020 has been a year of very mixed experiences, and of course, we will not continue to stop raising or bringing to the fore the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, not just in Nigeria, but globally developed economies and even emerging markets face the hit, and was hit also were the micro, small, and medium enterprises. And interventions across the globe, we've seen central banks, the Federal Reserve in the US, the Bank of England, Bank of Japan, Bank of Australia, the European Central Bank, they've all made efforts to support small businesses, micro, small, and medium enterprises. Nigeria is not left out of this, and Central Bank of Nigeria has done a lot this year to see what can happen in terms of providing stability and some level of a big brother role of support to these micro, small, and medium enterprises. The Central Bank of Nigeria is committed from its recent statement to increasing support to Nigeria's MSMEs as the country continues to navigate this challenging socioeconomic phase. Not just the pandemic, but the recession and even other very challenging economic indicators. Let's give you a rundown of some of the interventions that has happened this year so far on the Central Bank of Nigeria's table. First, the creation of the 150 billion naira targeted credit facility for affected households and small and medium enterprises through the NISAL Microfinance Bank. Through this initiative already, we've seen 149.21 billion naira being disbursed to about 316,869 beneficiaries. That's the data that we have based on the intervention. And according to the CBN, given the resounding success of this program and its positive impact on the output growth, it has decided to double the fund and is now 300 billion naira from the initial 150 billion naira. This is to help accommodate many more beneficiaries and boost consumer expenditure, which should positively impact output growth. So in terms of the targeted credit facility, it has been scaled ×2, and we expect to see more beneficiaries. Currently, you see how many have benefited so far. So hopefully maybe at the end we may see about 700,000 benefit from this. These are the kind of initiatives that, of course, we need to track to see the impact it's making on various sectors and segments of the economy. But yes, the Central Bank of Nigeria is not alone in this. It's doing what other of its counterparts are doing across the world, and it needs to be tracked, like I said earlier. Also, the bank disbursed Agribusiness and Small and Medium Enterprise Investment Scheme, the AGSMEIS, 92.90 billion naira. That initiative got 92.90 billion naira, and beneficiaries are 24,702 across the country. Again, these are interesting statistics, and it will be interesting to drill down to see the spread of this across sectors. The Anchor Borrowers Program has been one of the big initiatives of the central bank to support our areas of food production, agribusiness, and of course, increase activities in the agri sector. And so far, 164.91 billion naira has been disbursed, and we are heading to almost 1 million beneficiaries. 954,279 beneficiaries have now gotten part of that intervention. Again, we need to see how that's spreading in the entire agro value chain of the industry. Also, the establishment of a 1 trillion naira facility in loans to boost local manufacturing and production across critical sectors. 53 major manufacturing projects have received funding, 21 agricultural related projects, and 13 service projects are being funded to the tune of over 360 billion naira. I'm looking forward to seeing how industries like the creative industry, to the Creative Industry Financing Initiative of the Central Bank are benefiting so far, because that's one area of intervention that is needed, considering the fact that in the last third quarter 2020 GDP report, just a segment of the information and communication technology sector, the music, motion segment, subsector, contributed 1.62%, was one of the growth sectors in the last quarter to the economy, an improvement from a negative in the second quarter, showing you that that is an industry that needs to be supported in its value chain. Also, the arts and entertainment industry needs support because there was a negative growth in the third quarter 2020. So the creative industry would like to see what's happening more in that space, even as manufacturing and agriculture receives also increased attention from the central bank. And that brings us to the fact that there's a new direction for the financial markets in terms of what the central bank expects them to do as we head into 2021. This has been the thinking of the central bank and has been laid out for 2 occasions now by the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, for the ones I can really remember. First was at the 13th Annual Bankers Banking and Finance Conference, hosted by the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, where Mr. Godwin Emefiele said, if we want to really see the financial market support sectors that will stimulate growth, key areas of interest should be the information and communication technology sector, the agri sector, and of course, infrastructure financing. But I drill down to the ICT and the agri sector. Those are the 2 that I could pick up, that we can see MSMEs in those spaces position themselves to benefit from what we expect to be the new level of interventions from the banks, as the Central Bank of Nigeria is taking its sights to that area and telling the banks, look, this is what we're seeing. If you see what we're seeing, then definitely you can take that line, and we will see a lot of scaling economic activities. The Central Bank Governor re-emphasizes again in the 55th Annual Banking and Bankers Dinner hosted by the CIBN again, to show you that the CBN is taking this seriously. They want to see more intervention, they want to see more funding in ICT and agriculture. Those are areas that we can see MSMEs benefit. So if you're an MSME in those spaces, definitely it's important to take advantage and position, because the banks, the financial services industry should begin to prepare to increase their interventions. And interestingly, the central bank governor highlighted some areas in the agriculture space which MSMEs should get the signal. First, area of storage. Those that have interest in storage can benefit in terms of anticipating what the banks should do in providing facilities and funds. Storage has been a major challenge in Nigeria. Post-harvest losses, according to Farm Crowdy, are hitting trillions of naira, which is not good for the country. So we need to see some activity, some structure, some strategy, some business initiative around storage. The same goes to logistics. Logistics is a very big issue in the country too, in terms of improving farm to house production. I mean, activities from the farm getting to the home. We need to see logistics improve, and investment and businesses around that area should also get some level of funding, and also agri-research, agri-tech. Those in the agri-tech space also would position themselves to get funding. The same applies to ICT. In terms of software, we need to have a very robust software industry in the country. And reference has been made to India. India exports $100 billion worth of ICT services, and it is a big, big example. So there's a huge industry opportunity here in Nigeria, particularly the software industry, where a lot can be achieved in terms of how we can develop services. And again, the fintech industry is one very, very promising industry that continues to attract investments, and it's an area that we can see more funding and support. So definitely, we'll be watching the banks and the financial services to see what they do now that Central Bank of Nigeria has started a pathway for them to say, look, these are the sectors we should go and support, and I hope to see. The Central Bank of Nigeria governor jokingly said, well, if you don't do that, we have a plan B. What is the plan B of the Central Bank of Nigeria for the banks? Well, it's in the chest of the CBN governor. That brings us to our topic for today in terms of scaling micro, small, medium enterprises interventions to address unemployment and lead millions from poverty in Nigeria. Unemployment and poverty are interconnected socioeconomic challenges that are plaguing Nigeria. At 27.1%, unemployment continues to soar in the country, and poverty rate in Nigeria at over 40%, with over 80 million people in the poverty bracket, is a huge concern for Nigeria. One avenue for addressing and stemming this tide is through entrepreneurship and MSME development. As we know, Nigeria is facing huge issues of insecurity and crisis and crime, and part of this is attributed to the high level of unemployment because of a huge youthful population. Well, the way to go is through MSME development. That's one very key way that we can address this whole situation that's booming in our face. Here are some of the ways in which scaling MSMEs interventions can drive what we call industrialization and also bring economic stability in Nigeria. And it's not just a Nigeria thing, but globally, countries have always realized that where small businesses are supported, there is some level of stability and economic activities. Yesterday, we were watching the US President-elect, Senator Joe Biden, talking about the fact that the middle class will be part of the economic priority and rolling out its economic team. So definitely they'll be looking at supporting businesses, small businesses, and how they can recover from the impact of the pandemic. As we're getting the signal from the US about a $900 billion relief fund is being planned by the Senate, bipartisan approach. And all that part of that fund will also go to support businesses. So in the US, in the UK, in Europe, in Asia, just like in Nigeria, small businesses are top priority. But what is the way in which they can be supported to really achieve impact? Because we've seen a lot of interventions in Nigeria in the past. How have those interventions helped in addressing a challenge? Now, this is the first major data we need to take up. According to the Small Medium Enterprise Development Agency of Nigeria, Nigeria has over 41 micro, small, and medium enterprises, 41 million. 41 million. So what can you do to impact 41 million MSMEs? Because some of the interventions we're seeing, even in the previous administration and current, are laudable, but are they far-reaching in impact? So let's take a look at the ways in which we feel that this can begin to make impact and address these 41 million MSMEs. First, we need to embrace a long-term intervention for MSMEs that are sector-specific. The ones we have currently are more short-term. And yeah, like I said, various initiatives by governments are not bad, but it is understanding the intent and what we expect as the output. So we need long-term. Long-term means like a 7, 8 year, 10-year intervention plan that you can say at the end we will bring about 10, 15, 20 million MSMEs into that bracket, and at least you've addressed over 50%. Because currently we're not hitting up to 1 million yet, and that is a huge concern. So we need to work with data and ensure that in 10 years, over 50% of the total amount of MSMEs in the country feel the impact of interventions. That is something that's very important. The next is something that has been ongoing but has to be re-emphasized again and has to be improved, which is the ease of doing business in Nigeria. This administration has put that as a front burner for its policy plan. We have the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, and we have the Secretariat. They'll be doing a lot of work to make Nigeria a top 100 nation destination in terms of doing business. So that area has to be top priority, continue to give it attention, particularly in the area of business registration and the processes for doing business in Nigeria. It has to improve to encourage MSMEs. We need to see the completion of critical industrial zones and parks in the country. We need to see more industrial zones, and the current ones being planned by the Federal Ministry of Industries, Trade and Investment in partnership with various other groups need to come on board. This will help in terms of productivity. If you have, for example, 100,000 MSMEs in an industrial zone, imagine the productivity that will come from that segment. So we'll be looking at various markets in terms of providing issues and infrastructure like power and other major amenities that can help improve the activities. Industrial zones and parks will be very critical. We need to see viable ones, not just at the federal but state level. And then we can begin to talk about the impact it will make. So these are the ways in which you can touch the MSMEs where they are situated in an enabling environment, industrial park, industrial zone that has all those major facilities of infrastructure like, for example, power, which is very key. The next phase we'll look at is supporting micro businesses. And why? Because most of the interventions have always been going to small and medium enterprises. Several guests that we featured on the MSME segment of the Economy and Politics have said we need a tailored intervention and strategy for micro businesses. We know that we have the microfinance banks. They have to also be encouraged to support micro businesses. And then also SMEDAN has to also give top priority to micro businesses in the various interventions. So like I said, the NSIP intervention programs laid out through JIP to the NPower and other initiatives are good, but need to be long-term. We need to see micro businesses at the front burner of those interventions to make it really work for the mass. Because micro businesses constitute over 75% of the entire MSME ecosystem. So think about it. Also, the MSMEs need to be supported through a niche market approach. A niche market approach is very important in our country. We can't afford a situation where we just put interventions into an industry without looking at the niche markets. So if you look at textile, you have to look at issues like the buttons for the shirt, the various layers of the clothes and fabrics. This niche market has to be addressed. And this is one area that Germany does very well. And we can even get technical assistance and support, partnering with countries like Germany, who have a very strong, robust MSME strategy and system. We also need to ensure that the value chain development for MSME activities are strengthened. For example, the agri sector. If our interventions are in agri, particularly for the MSMEs, production, cultivation, storage, logistics are all very important parts of the value chain. And we must consider the value chains in our interventions. Also, the women-owned businesses are very important. We've seen efforts by the Survival Fund currently by the government giving priority to women-owned businesses, which is commendable. But women-owned business must be given priority because women have been deprived a lot, and this time we need to give a huge, robust plan to support women-owned businesses because they play a very key role in transformation of economies. And a big example of how women-owned businesses have helped is the Bangladesh story. The Grameen Bank, with Nobel laureate Professor Mohammed Yunus, focused a lot on women-owned businesses, and they were able to scale and provide economic activities and boost their communities and also contribute to the national revenue and economy. So women-owned businesses should be given top priority as we carry out a new scale of interventions that will make impact in the economy. The rural-based entrepreneurs and MSMEs should not be left out. Our interventions should always factor the rural-based entrepreneurs, particularly the agro sector. They are very key there, and they're playing a lot in terms of their contribution. So rural-based entrepreneurs should not be forgotten. We should also factor them in all the interventions that are being carried out. The monetary authorities, the central bank, they're doing well in supporting, but they should work assiduously to bridge the gap between the financial services and the real sector. So it is nice to see how they're encouraging banks, increasing the loan-to-deposit ratio by 65%, and of course ensuring that they support specific sectors. But it's very important that they continue to work with the financial services industry to address the huge gap in interventions in the real sector. And of course, insurance provisions must be factored for every MSME. Micro, particularly, businesses should embrace insurance provisions. The state and local governments should embark on long-term intervention, not just the federal government. This is also applying to state and local governments in terms of the activities. SMEDAN needs to reposition its operations to serve better. So this is a word to the DG of SMEDAN. Re-strategize, because the game is getting bigger, and of course we need to see scale. And lastly on this part, the Corporate Affairs Commission also has to come on board better in terms of fully digitizing its services and businesses. President Muhammad Buhari recently rolled out a 250,000 registration free service for businesses, which is commendable. We believe that this can be scaled also, but CAC has a key role to play in improvising its service. At the recent webinar, the Registrar General of the CAC said a new software will be launched in January 2021 by the Commission to improve services and interface with the businesses. He said to stakeholders that the new software will help, will be updated and be simplified in terms of interface, and recognize the role of lawyers, chartered accountants in presenting their clients. He also stressed the fact that the Commission is working also to ensure that the infrastructure needed to implement the recently signed KAMA Act 2020 is ready, which will help strengthen the Nigerian business environment. So indeed, there's a lot to expect, and if we can address those things laid out, then we can see over 50% of the MSMEs impacted, and we can now begin to say, yes, we're touching that very critical nerve center that drives our economy. And that'll be all for today's edition of the Economy and Politics Show. You can visit our website, www.procng.com, to watch our videos, read our news stories, and also get a glimpse of our reports to read and learn from them. On our ProShare website, we have a very rich array of MSME stories and developments cutting across MSME regulations, MSME startups, and MSMEs associations and announcements in terms of stories and developments. Click on those various segments as you go to our website on the right bar, and you will see all this information rich enough for you to gain insight on. And finally, if you have any comments and views on what we can do to improve interventions in our MSMEs in our country, send your views and comments to news@procng.com. We will receive them and respond and acknowledge you appropriately. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.